the sound when you're walking, but when you're encountering a suspense moment that you need to be stealth, how the music changes, and then you can hear how the audio of the player of the character changes, the way he breathes, why he's breathing like that. And when I saw that, I saw, okay, then I this not programming that I like, but I need to understand why the design in each game works like that.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Zero to Play podcast. I'm your host, Carl Leduc, and today I'm joined by Esther Felicies. Esther is a freelance Unity developer and indie dev currently based in Puerto Rico. Today we'll be talking about her game dev journey so far and what it has been like documenting it on her YouTube channel, the pros and cons of Unity as a game engine, and some of the struggles and challenges she has faced and how she has overcome them. So sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 3 of season 4 of the Zero to Play podcast. All right, welcome Esther to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Carl, for the invite.
Awesome. So I just want to preface this by saying Esther's been listening to the show since I'm almost sure the first episode at the beginning of the year. And I just want to thank Esther first off for just helping me get through some episodes when I wasn't sure anyone was listening. I always saw Esther there giving support and saying that she was getting value from the podcast, and that helped me keep going. So thank you so much for that. And I'm glad I can finally have you on the show and talk about your journey and talk about what you're currently working on. What I love the most about you and your profile is how vulnerable and open you are with your content. You have an amazing YouTube channel where you talk about applications that you've applied for, interviews. You talk about the courses that you're currently studying in Unity and what you're learning, what your current indie projects are. And there's a flood of information and value there as you kind of get better at your craft. And I just want to kind of first off just ask a question because I find this really fascinating. What made you want to start documenting your journey at the beginning to kind of, because at the beginning you're probably not very confident in your skills as a developer. You're still learning, and we're all always learning, but back then, what made you want to start documenting your experiences and the projects that you're currently working on?
So I started documenting my process since by joining my first step was to join Discord communities about game development. And inside those community, it was always, they were pushing us to show our craft either on Twitter or on YouTube. And well, you try with a basic social medias with like Instagram, Twitter, others like that. And there's just a small content you can show in those social media. So they're always pushing us to show it on YouTube, since that's where you can show everything related to craft, programming, everything related to game development, or you can talk to the persons without thinking about the length about the videos.
Yeah.
So I started doing just small presentation, but that's why I started showing my craft. And obviously, if we're in the game development business, you want to get noticed by at least recruiters or other studios. So that's, instead of a CV, you kind of put your games on a CV, just a portfolio and videos. And that's how I managed to jump in and show my progress and everything, my content on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of confidence to kind of put yourself out there, to think about the structure of the video. Even if you're not worried about what the length is, you still have to be present and know kind of what you're talking about. What was the first video that you created, or the first video that you're kind of proud of that you can remember?
The first one or the most proudest one?
Let's go first one first, but then I want to ask you for your favorite after.
My first one was more or less the introduction because something that not, it is a lot of speaker, because something is, they tell you to create a YouTube channel, they tell you to create your content, but sometimes you think about that, but without realizing that you need a name or
Yeah.
logo.
Yeah.
And you can do go personal, but I think for my channel name, I was stuck for 3 months trying to see how my channel is gonna be called, and then what kind of icon or symbol or whatever logo I wanted to put on profile, because I wanted to separate everything
Mhm.
from my accounts to make that solid, everything related to game development.
Mhm.
My first video was more of an introduction to my
Okay.
channel.
Okay.
I was presenting more or less why I was showing the channel, why I was creating the channel, what was the purpose of the channel. And obviously I think in that video, I explained more or less the type of content or projects that I'm working on my
Mhm.
personal projects. So that was my first video, but trying to have a name for my channel, it took me roughly like knowing everything before, like, okay, this is my name, this is my logo, let's
Yeah.
get on with it. But that was my first video, more
Yeah.
introduction.
That's awesome. I've done a lot of I've spoken to a lot of YouTubers. I used to work as a video content creator, and I've had many kind of YouTube channels in my like time, and that's kind of how the podcast kind of came about in the YouTube channel here. But it's funny because a lot of people get caught on things like the name or what the channel is going to be about, and it's awesome. Like I think it's important that you said it took you 3 months to kind of just figure out the logo and the name and things like that. And once you kind of overcome that hump, it's amazing how kind of fast everything can flow once you know the kind of content that you need to create. And so what's one video that you're really proud of that you made so far?
Wow. One of, I think there were two videos. I think there were, at first I was proud of the video that I did trying to show how to upload your game to the Google Play Store, because that's one of the most viewed one on my channel. But recently, the one that I'm more proud of, because I have been receiving a lot of cool comments, is about my interview process and my rejection letter.
Yeah.
So until now, those are my top two videos, because even though it was something that happens to me, I have seen how others commented out that sometimes it's very helpful. So right now, because of how others are viewing that video, that's one of my favorite ones until
Totally.
now.
And I think what that says is, so many companies are very secretive. The kind of interview process is very complicated. And I think a lot of people aren't wanting to talk about their experience, especially if they get rejected. And I love that you created a piece of content that made it a positive, that you spoke about the takeaways and the feedback that you got. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what that kind of rejection letter was like and what you learned from that whole experience?
So, like I said in the video, I was not a stranger to rejection letter, but this one hit differently because I kept showing the video. It's like this long, the email, but not about rejection. Is that the helpful tips that the developer gave me in order to apply it in my journey, because I have received rejection letters, or more or less like 2 sentences of the emails, like, okay, we saw it, but no thank you, or just like that. But that one was like that. And
cool.
In the interview, we have like a normal chat like we're having right now. And by receiving that letter, it let me know that not everyone in the gaming industry has that negative impact that we have been seeing on Twitter recently. So that one like opened my eyes to, okay, not everyone is like that. And the what caught me my attention was the details in everything that he was telling me about. I mean, like intermediate concept or more professional concept in programming. He told me the properties of the programming that I should be aware of when I'm doing Unity. And he gave me some tips on videos, YouTube links about math in gaming. So that's what caught my attention. And obviously when I show that video or show that post, it's not the same experience that other has, So that is why I wanted to share it, to let others know that, hey, I got received these tips. I think they will help you out, even though you have not received something similar. But here you go, more or less, since we're in the same journey of being a game developer. So that's how I saw the interview and that rejection letter. But
Totally.
me a little, because it was in London. I was thinking going over there, like, oh yeah, I'm going to London, but no, it didn't happen. But just by reading that, I was like, you know what? Let's get to it. So it
Yeah,
pumps me up.
that's awesome. I have a question, but first I just want to say that it's really cool, and I hope that people listening that are in leadership positions or hiring know, like, they can see the value in providing that extra 5 minutes to provide feedback of the interview to the person, and how much it helps them in their journey, and how positive and motivated and inspiring, like inspired, that can make them to get, the next application. And I think that that's a really cool experience that you had, feeling like there was a human on the other side. It's not just an automated response. And that's a really cool lesson, and I hope more people in the games industry treat the people going through the interview process like that. I'm sure some of the biggest studios get hundreds, thousands of applications, but maybe once it gets trickled down to maybe a dozen people that actually go to the face-to-face interview or do the programming test, that there is like the same amount of time given to give feedback if they don't get accepted, because it's a lot of time invested on your end to prepare the application and do any tests and things like that.
I have seen people get dismotivated because of those coding challenges, because it's not a person doing those challenges. It's a system, and even though you have done it, you know it runs, but since it's something very automatic, automatically will disqualify your answers. And a lot of my developers that I have seen during this process of interview gets very discouraged because of it. So by showing the rejection letter that I got, it's like telling me it happens, but it's not the process of all the studios that you have seen.
Totally. Absolutely. So you mentioned that this was a job in London, and you thought about, what if you moved there? What kind of what would be your ideal opportunity that you were to get? Like, what location, what role would you love to get to see, like, in your inbox to apply for?
More what I always the position. Give me a few moments. What happened? Okay. Yeah. Relax. Down. Sorry about that. More or less about programming, because I have noticed that is my strongest skill set, even though I have be constantly learning. I'm more of the programmer. So nothing UI related, nothing sound, no effects, no modeling, no nothing. I'm more or less a programmer. So if you want the gameplay to be like that, I'd rather program with it. But the position itself, until now, with what we're living right now, I'd rather have it remote. But more or less, if this whole situation comes to a norm sooner or later, I can either go Canada or something not the same as where I'm from, since Puerto Rico is more like a tropical island. So I want something different. But nothing, not a place of too cold, because I don't like cold.
Good to know.
But for London, I was like thinking like, I need to know how to travel. I was thinking which friends to go with to help me travel the subway, and then it tell me it's not subway, so you need to learn the slangs of some stuff. It's like, interesting. So maybe something different.
Like, a different
Now,
culture.
yes.
So
but not too cold.
You mentioned before we started recording about English being your second language, and I'd love to just know how that has been in your journey, especially kind of learning programming as well. Has that made an impact and made it harder? What kind of advice would you give to others that English might not be their first language, and how to help in the whole game development journey that you've been on?
Well, that's some English has been my second language since I have memory. I mean, I have learned it because of books
Mhm.
All my content of entertainment always been in English. TV, video games. Mostly my English comes from video games and school because I had never stepped my feet. I never been to a state.
Yeah,
So I've been born and raised here in Puerto Rico. My English actually comes from my entertainment, from books, video
cool.
games, and talking with my friends. But knowing English has been more easier to learn programming since basically all the content around programming is English,
Mm,
and all the books in university has been English.
mm,
The slangs, the way you express the coding, the method, the functions, and the properties, everything is in
mm,
English. So those who do not learn English, um, just little by little learn at least the concept of programming
mm.
in English. Has lately I've been discovering that a few of my favorite games they are from studio from Spain.
Wow.
And even though that there are some games that I cannot put it on Spanish Spain because there's some words in Spain that we are not allowed to say, so I mostly have to turn it back in English when I was younger.
Yeah.
But by knowing that they play the game either with Spanish subtitles, but the way they that more or less is like a helpful tip.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
English has been something that helps me out with everything related to computers because even on computers everything is in English. And
Mm,
if you presenting something in Spanish like the menu on the phone or on the computer, I get lost
yeah.
like fast.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I actually didn't realize just how things like programming books and things like that, that the way to kind of learn a lot of it is probably blocked by it just being translated in English and nothing else, which is something I didn't think of. What
In I'm sorry.
no, no,
In
no, go for it.
university, we have this trouble in some of the tests because the professor wanted to give the test in Spanish when everything, the books, the terminology, everything was in English.
Mm,
And even though I was a straight A student, sometimes I get easily a C because I didn't understand the question
wow.
or about how to express. For example, network in Spanish is red,
Mm-hmm.
but in English it sounds as red, the color. So
Mm,
that turn sometimes we were get confused. So
mm.
when we're talking about technology wise, everything related programming, the English language is the best way to go.
Yeah. Wow. Congrats on being a straight A student. I'd love to talk to you a bit more about your kind of educational route. But to finish on that topic, what's the earliest video game you remember playing in English growing up, or just in general growing up that you kind of remember from your childhood?
Give me a moment because I was thinking I have like a mixed memory of playing in the PlayStation 1 in the house of my cousins and playing Nintendo 64 in the house of my cousins and Mario 64.
Yeah.
But I also have memories playing the Super Nintendo in my grandmother's house about Mario. But I think officially I had the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 1 here in my house. So those were my earliest
Cool.
memories. I have a mix of consoles in in my early times playing games, but Mario was my earliest one. I think in PlayStation 1 was a Tomb Raider game.
Yeah.
Tomb Raider.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't pass it until recently. I downloaded it again. I was like, really? This is how I got stuck. I was like 10. So me and my sister were like, really? This was so easy. You can back then versus now. But those are my earliest memories: Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, and PlayStation 1.
Awesome.
Those are my earliest enemy.
Yeah, so I love how much of an impact Mario, like just Nintendo, had on all of our childhoods. For people that grew up in the like late 80s and 90s. I was born in 94, and not only, yeah, so I say Nintendo because I was Mario was a big part of my childhood, but so is Pokemon. And it's just amazing how they've captured so many people's childhoods, and it makes me think about what the next generation like in 10 years time will be thinking about when they grew up. And I think IPs like Fortnite have done a good job of kind of capturing that culture for a lot of kids growing up now. Roblox is a place that I need to go deeper on to understand exactly what's happening there.
Same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
But it seems like that's making a big impact as well to a lot of the new generation growing up. So, like, a lot of people played video games growing up, but not a lot of people decided that they wanted to make games. And I think what I like about you is that you've specifically said that you want to help convince people of the potential of mobile games. So what was your journey like? What made you want to, like, what was the moment that you decided you wanted to study games and pursue that as a career?
So my bachelor degree actually is what we call information technology, and where they give you more of a base of everything related to computers. In college time, I had like 3 different programming languages: Visual Basic, C++, C#, and a lot of the way they tell you about computers is through college. But I have never took a course about game development until a friend of mine, when he noticed that I was learning C# because of my programming class, he told me, with C# you can actually do games. I was like, how? Because I didn't know how to make games back then. He was, yeah, Unity. I was like, what is Unity? So back then, Unity was known as Unity 4 or 5, not 2019, nothing related to that.
Yeah.
So he told me back then, I think 2D was not even on their mind. I mean, I started programming when the first few mobiles in Androids was releasing, Gingerbread. So way back in and all that. So
Yeah.
when he told me that with what I was learning, even though it's not was game related, I can learn game development. He showed me that I downloaded Unity. He told me how to start. And Unity back then had like a few courses, like tutorials in how to begin with game development. Obviously, that opens like a lot of stuff that you need to be aware of in game development. And since I always like to read books, at the same time I always have like a very vivid imagination, and sometimes I like take notes of storytelling stuff in my head, and I have like a lot of sticky notes like this of ideas and story. And when they told me that I can do it in game development, I was like, oh, really? And that's when I started. In a way, I started digging myself into seeing if I like game development. He told me about Unity, but obviously Unity was not the only game engine back there. I mean, you have Unreal. Unreal back then, you needed to pay for it. Unity was one. Coco was one. There's one called IGBX, I think it is called. And so I was more or less trying to identify which one that I wanted to use Unity, because of the C# background that I had in college. It's a lot more easier. I was obviously I was since I was a developer in other areas, I was trying to identify which operation system that I was gonna use. We have Windows, Ubuntu, so depending on the operation system you're using, is the game engine that is run. Until I decided officially that I was going to use Unity to do my game development journey. But that also opens the door and the headaches that game development is not just programming. There's like modeling. You learn about Blender, you learn about audio, FX, and you're like, do I need to learn all of this? And that's when you're struck with, oh my God, this is not easy.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided, I want to do it. And my friend that introduced me to Unity, he knew around the basic of Blender, so we tried to do something. But I tell him, let me have an understanding of how Unity works, and how I can apply my programming background in C#. Once I feel comfortable, then we can go back with the ideas we have for this game that we were talking about. But the thing is that you never start learning. because the
Yeah.
system keeps keeping updating. You're like, okay, what should I do then? So you have to make peace with yourself that you may not know everything about
Mm.
game development, but accept which one is your strongest skill set
Mm-hmm.
and try to apply what you learn and bring materials or other stuff and accept you're gonna always be learning about this, because once you enter Blender to try to model your character, no.
That's a whole other
I've
career
tried.
path.
That's not, yeah, that same as computers, game development. When I start diving in game development, you notice the different branches that
Mm.
comes out of game development. And audio, I didn't know there's strictly based about audio. FX, didn't know that's something else. It
Mm.
also device modeling,
Yeah.
architectural, 3D, everything related, UX,
Yeah.
UI.
Yeah.
So once you keep learning about that, you're like overwhelmed yourself. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to be a game developer, but once you accept your position in the game industry, you're like, you know what, I can do this.
Yeah.
So that is when everything.
I think that's what's so incredible about games is how just how complex they are to create, and I think that what that really means is how important community is and how important it is to make friends. And if you do want to pursue that kind of indie path, to really find people that are also really passionate, that have a different skill set, and combining your skills, because I like people that are solo indie devs that do everything from the modeling to the tech art to the UI and the, it's insane, and it's nonstop. And if like just focusing on programming, like you were saying, Unity offer new features every few months that you need to learn. Can you imagine that with every single discipline in games and just
Oh
all the
yes,
different
no, no, no,
tools?
no, no, no.
It's crazy. Yeah. Do you feel like Unity, how, like, the way that it's evolved over the last decade, do you think it's become easier to make games for someone starting out now, or do you think it was kind of more simple, and easier to understand, back when you started?
I think right now it's more easier than when I was starting out because of all the resources that Unity is providing. So back then they only have like a few courses in order to understand how it works, how to move a 3D game object, but the concept of programming, what you can do to achieve other results without you knowing anything related to animation or VFX. So right now, I think it's easier,
Mhm.
especially since they opened the learning channel free.
Mhm.
Back then, you have when I was starting out, you either use Udemy,
Mm.
Udemy to learn, or buy books
Mm.
in pack. And then since every resource, the way they approach programming or how to approach Unity is very differently, that once you start comparing, you notice the way you can call properties or get I forgot the term of Unity. Anyway, the way that they show a program is very differently when you're using too much resources.
Mm.
That's back then. If since I had a background in programming, I understood it perfectly. But for someone who's starting out, um, you're gonna get lost. In
Mm.
Unity, before it accepted three languages: C Sharp, JavaScript, and Vue. I believe. So it was recently when they accepted a C Sharp as the main
Mm.
programming language for the system. And now the way they approach programming concept or 3D concept in the learning platform, it's a lot more easier for others to approach it. And little by little, they understand that background of C Sharp. So
Mm.
I think right now is the easiest way to learn. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of communities um, right now, especially on Discord, because if you buy a Udemy
Mm.
course, they give you the links to the servers in Discord, and you're gonna find others to learn from it. There are two servers that I really like the way they approach the learning pattern in for Unity.
Mhm.
Is Game Dev TV and Game Dev HQ,
Mm.
the way they approach the community structure and everything. So I think right now is the easier,
Yeah.
the moment to learn Unity is more easier than
Yeah.
when I started out.
I did a game dev TV tutorial a year ago for Unreal, and I'm being honest, I haven't finished it yet. I got halfway through. It was developing 3 different games in Unreal, and they just got
Mm-hmm.
progressively harder and longer. And after I learned the basics of how to navigate around the windows, I realized just how massive, like even just learning blueprinting in Unreal,
Mm-hmm.
it was still way over my head, and that was the easy, like that was that was you know I'm still very very early in my game dev journey of kind of learning how to even make like prototypes and things. That's ultimately what I'd love to do in my journey as a producer, and just kind of being familiar with the games industry. But I just don't think I have a programmer's mind, and I'm not a straight A student either. So it's going to take me a long time. But
You
that's
got it. Don't
Unreal.
worry. Don't
I
worry
was
about it.
I was thinking of trying to understand the basics of Unity and see how that kind of if like changes my perspective a bit, because I know Unreal is more geared for kind of 3D type
Mm-hmm.
games, whereas Unity might be a bit more easier to enter into if I'm wanting to design like a 2D style game. In today's supporter segment, I'd like to bring attention to Logitech Gaming, and Blue Microphones. Thanks to them, they sent me a product bundle that has just elevated the content of this podcast and show. As you can see, the video quality is incredible now. They sent me a Logitech Stream Cam. For audio, they sent a Blue Yeti microphone. I already had one, but now I have 2, which will enable me to do in-person interviews and other things like that. And also they provided this Logitech Gaming Pro X headset to have as just a great pair of headphones to use for the podcast, but honestly, I'm going to use it for my own personal work and games as well. So really appreciative of them. Go check them out on their website, logitech.com, bluemicrophones.com, and I think Logitech G or Logitech Gaming. You can find them on social media, and I'm just really grateful for them, and please support their products. So talking about indie games, what are you currently working on, and what's that kind of project, or if you've got several, like what have those projects been like so far in your journey?
So in my personal project, I was aiming more of a 2D, 0.5D type of game for mobile, because
Mm-hmm.
that's my aim, to do a PC, but at the same time do it for mobile. And all of a sudden, see, I was not comfortable with 3D, so I decided 2.5D in
Mm-hmm.
order to make the game. But since I was feeling more comfortable around 3D, so I decided to change it. It's on hold until right now, the my personal project, because I'm working as a freelancer Unity developer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my main focus right
Yeah.
now. I cannot get too much details, but I'm working with Black Hive as a Unity developer, freelance contractor with them.
Awesome.
So um, I cannot talk about much detail, but they're recently releasing a new game called Kova Alpha Link.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with them
Cool.
as a contractor, a Unity contractor. But my main focus will be to bring ideally something that you have seen in PC environment, like an a mix of fantasy idea of aliens and knights. So don't take that idea. People hearing me out, that's my idea. But I'm trying to put in that game stuff that sometimes I dislike to program, or stuff I dislike about when playing games. I'm very a scary cat, so I don't like much of a suspense or
Mm-hmm.
scary games. And there was a game, very, very basic game called Gone Home. It took me like 3 months to finish it. And nothing happens in that game. My sister find out, it's like, that game has nothing. Shut up. You don't know why. But every time I enter a black corner and all of a sudden the lights turn off, I like put everything off and like, no, you know what, no. So my idea for my project is to bring something similar that I dislike about games and put it in there, like for example melee combat. I made a basic melee combat system. I'm pretty proud of, so I'm gonna put that game. Something suspense of enemy jumping on you without you noticing, or doing something like that for my future projects. But adding stuff I dislike. So that's my main goal. But for now, it's on hold, trying to build content and think about my career as a freelance. But that is it's on hold, but I'm still making progress with the
Yeah, I love it.
environment.
I love it, and it's awesome that you've got that project for when you do have time. And it's, yeah, it's, I think it's a matter of time at the end of the day. For anyone trying to pursue an indie journey. So I just want to kind of reiterate what you said. You're actively putting things in the game that you dislike, so that you can like overcome them. What's can you talk a bit more about the reasoning behind that?
More or less is try to understand them,
Okay.
because when you're making games, I noticed that in design wise, I don't have that skill,
Mm,
because there's a reason for everything around games. Especially once you start game development, you understand some why that this era looks like this, why there's sound, why there's stuff. And when you're focused on game development, your social medias try to focus on that. So
mm,
when I was focusing, for example, Instagram about game dev, they give you like previews of other accounts, and there's this account that only do sound and music, and they make a post about the difference between the sound when you're walking, but when you're encountering a suspense moment that you
mm,
need to be stealth, how the music changes, and then you can hear how the audio of the player of the character changes, the way he breathes, why he's
mm,
breathing like that. And when I saw that, I saw, okay, then I this not programming that I like, but I need to understand why this the design in each game works like that. And you see me seeing different games and seeing how they put everything in perspective. I mean, why this corridor looks like this, why the
mm,
sound looks like this, why when you have headset, you're gonna hear in this section different sounds in here. So
mm.
why? And that's when I decided to play again. Epic gave it for free. Uh, Alien Obsolation, I think it's called. I don't
Isolation.
remember. Isolation. Thank you.
Yeah,
Alien Isolation.
it's a
So
scary
again,
game.
I did. Yeah, I dislike suspense and scary games, but that's why I don't go near Resident Evil. But I do see gameplays because I want to see why they took that path, why they changed everything. So in
Mm,
game isolation, there's a big ship. I mean, you're in a station, and the way they manage the player to move around, but at the same time with the sound,
mm,
you cannot run, because then you notice the aliens will come near you, and you don't know the alien is next to you until you hear it.
mm,
So those are the things that I noticed that I like to understand in
mm,
making games. And even though it's not about my skill set, that's another branch area of game development. So I'm trying to understand how to bring that experience into my little project, even if the details is small, like footsteps or just the breathing or something, to
mm,
bring that into the project. So that is why I'm putting stuff that I dislike in order to understand it, in order to appreciate it more, and then apply it into little prototypes that I like to do. So
mhm. I love
that
it.
is why.
I, I can tell that the learning is what motivates you to, like, you're putting yourself in uncomfortable positions so that you can kind of understand it more. And like the on the other side, having like making knowing how to make a good horror game is great for content as well, by the way. If you stream yourself playing Alien Isolation, especially if like you said, you're a scaredy cat and you're easily frightened, that's going to make for great content. Um but I think, yeah, when it comes to horror games, you mentioned it a lot, like sound, how important sound is for building that suspense and creating that feeling of like of unease, which is awesome. And I love that you're kind of exploring that and challenging yourself. And what's cool is like having that vision of wanting to create a game that feels like a horror game. You're going to learn so much programming in that journey without even having to really think about it, because you have that long-term goal of what you're trying to achieve,
Hmm.
which is really cool. I really love that. Do you, and the fact that your skill set is in programming, yet you see the value in design and the kind of decisions that are made by designers. I love how you're able to have that self-awareness in your journey, so that you'll grow faster that way without doubting yourself and what you're currently doing. Are there any other projects that you've worked on in the past, maybe that you'd like to touch on, like different genres that you've maybe created, or different types of games?
Well, the only one that I basically did back in my days, it's no longer the store, because when Google changes to 64-bit, the others, if you don't change the game or the package, they're gonna remove the game.
Wow.
Back then, I think I lost the primary project, so that's why I couldn't update it.
Oh
But
no.
was a basic babyish shooter in which I designed like the characters. It's like a egg-shaped character, bluish with big eyes, and then I was able to import it from game to Unity, and it was like Galaga. You move left and right, but you were shooting some enemies,
Mhm.
and then I decided to let the projectile to behave in a way that even though you're shooting, it's gonna go back at you. So you need to be aware of your enemies at the same time with the projectiles, or it's gonna hit you. So those
Cool.
are the games that I did back in. There is also one live in Google Play Store, but I did it. It was my first project as a junior developer working in a group, because the artist contact another Unity developer, and here in Puerto Rico, when we were in Comic Con, he knew that I was a developer. He contacted me if I want to be his junior. In more way, I decided to say yes in order to understand how the process worked in communications with the artist
Mm.
and making the game. But one time we got hit by the hurricane in 2017, and we lost contact with the main developer. So I decided
Wow.
to, yeah, he somehow like forgot that the project existed when the hurricane hit, and we tried to contact him, but he didn't show any like concerns of the project. So the artist contact me if I want to finish it, since it was a basic project. I
Mm.
was a little runner-up, so it's called El Jíbaro,
Mhm.
and it was just jumping around from platform to platform, avoiding ravens or crows. So that was my first experience in uploading everything, and the artist liked the concept, and it's published right now. So
Hmm.
more or less, that's uh, my experience with game development itself, published per
Yeah.
se.
Yeah, it's cool. And you talked about working with like a team, working with an artist, and kind of understanding that process. It's crazy how every project that might, feel similar
Mm-hmm.
teaches you so many different things, depending on the kind of people you're working with, how big the team is. If everyone's remote, the kind of skills that you learn with
Mm-hmm.
communicating remotely, and things like that. Um, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, but that's a horrible um, uh, thought that the hurricane was disruptive like that. Yeah. So one question that I love to ask guests that come on the show, whether they've been in the industry for 20 years or whether they've just started off, is why they like games as a medium. And I really like asking this question because everyone answers it slightly differently, but at the same time exactly the same. So why do you love games as a medium? Why have you stuck around in this industry, and you're continuing to kind of grow and explore it? What is it about games that you love?
Oh, it's like you can experience different storytelling in games, and the way I see the game industry as a media, sometimes even if you don't know the person, or for example, you're in Comic Con and you have a badge of Mario, whatever, of a game, and all of a sudden someone tells you, "Oh, I like your badge." Can easily start a conversation, and even if you don't know the person, um, you have something in common. I see it like that when I was in school, that you may not know your classmate, but knowing the like Pokemon or Mario, that's how you start with a
Hmm.
process of communicating with other people that you don't know. I mean, there was a time when when it was started out in animation, that you see all the episodes, and Burger King they were selling these Pokeballs, and inside they were the Pokemons.
Yeah.
So, and then if you had like 5 or 6, we were starting playing around like Pokemon Master. One of them will be like Team Rocket stealing our Pokemon, so we need to run around and play around to to catch them. So that's how I see it. And once you grow more or less older, or you have a different point of view of games, the storytelling is different. I mean, there's you can read a story in books, and you can have in many you can imagine yourself how the story goes. But if you see a different storytelling on video games, it's more different, and sometimes you get to live by it. And sometimes you can easily cry something happens, or the way to appreciate art in games is when they're not done in 3D, more in 2D. So you tend to appreciate more. Recently, I played Gris. It's a 2D platformer game made by Spain studio, and there's the person, the character doesn't speak. It's only music, it's only the environment, and the art is differently. So you see the signs very differently. You see sounds. So that's how I see the games in as approach in media. So that's how I see it, games in media.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's they're more immersive. I mean, I just think when you mentioned Pokemon, like, you mentioned the animated series, and it's cool how it can spill from a game to a TV show, and how people want to kind of like live in those worlds. It's all linked, I think. But I think games do offer like a different sense of immersion that that make you feel maybe more connected to the characters and the story. But yeah, it's a fascinating medium that I love talking about. And I love what you said about how, like, a 2D game, you can appreciate art, and this sounds differently when there's no dialogue, or just when you restrict some areas, like some disciplines in games. If you hide things, you pay attention to others. There's just so much yet to explore with different types of experiences in games. So yeah, no, thanks for touching on that. One thing that I want to end on is, are you currently looking for freelance positions? Are you currently in the market for like a job? If anyone listening has an opportunity, what kind of opportunities would you be interested in getting people to reach out to you for?
So right now I can either go both ways. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. I can go both ways. Freelancing, I like freelancing since I have a more control of my time. I can easily work in game development, also work on my craft. And my goal itself is to make like a little studio for making small prototypes, but also make games, but also try to be a small publisher and show what you can bring for PC and mobile, since that's my main focus on my content and what I want to bring something different to the mobile market. Sometimes I get tired of the constant mobile gaming right now. It's cool. There's a big broad of opportunities in the mobile market, especially for games. But recently, especially for a long time, I've been hearing a lot of gamers, I mean, this play to win. So you have to pay to win. So that's something that discourages a lot of players, because the game seems fun, seems entertaining, but having that as the way to win is very discouraging. I'm one of the gamers back in the days that you just put your disc and just play. Now you have to put your disc and wait for it downloading the content. But freelancing allows me to play around with that idea. But if I can pursue my passion in a position in a small indie studio, or or game studio itself, I can also go with that road.
Cool.
So more or less, I'm whatever comes first. But freelancing is something that I like to do, but it's the opportunity comes, and to be more focused on my craft, but in the more environment structure studio, then yes, that's also a big yes.
Totally.
So whatever opportunity comes, I will still like, let me think about it, but it's more likely can easily go both ways.
Yeah, it's a good mission, and I think that will help motivate you through the projects and the decisions that you make, like having that mindset. Because if you feel that way, there's no doubt that millions of other people feel that way as well. I feel that way too. There's nothing. The experience of games is changing because of mobile, and for them all to be Wi-Fi dependent and to have a day one patch kind of thing. Yeah, I understand, but keep following that feeling, because I think that a lot of people share that as well. One question I want to end on. We've only got a few more minutes, but you mentioned in a post somewhere that you feel like Unity is more than a game engine, and I'd love to understand a bit more what your mindset is of why you say that. What is Unity? What more can Unity do than create games?
Uh, it, wow, Unity can be a little both ways. I mean, recently it started as a game engine, but it has the way that is continuing growing. You can apply it for training simulations, and you can. One of our first things that I caught my eye on Unity is that you can actually do applications with it, not just game. You can actually connect it with AWS, Azure, like a backend. You can connect it with a database. So more or less, you can do applications with it. Yes, the road to learn how to do it is more differently when you're learning mobile dev directly, but you can also do it with Unity. And the way they're approaching mechanics to control machinery, the way the entertainment business, or the way people are using Unity to show off cars, to show off the environment, to show off any houses. It's no longer just a game engine. Personally, with what I have seen, maybe others will say their opinions, but for me, it's more of a game engine. I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Unity was also used for movies. Lion King was used with Unity, and the short films of Baymax Dreams for Disney was also used in Unity. So you don't necessarily need to know programming or be a game developer primarily. You can also dive in differently. I mean, that's one of the things I like about your podcast, especially one of my favorite ones is the Kathy, that shows something about game development other than programming. Showing what she has done for the game development business, even though she's not a programmer. That's what caught my eyes, because Unity is doing also the same. The way, if they want to show Nike or something, you can use your AI application done by Unity to scan your shoes or something like that and show it off. So the programmers, Unity can be used with whoever wants. You only need to know the tools of Cinemachine in order to know how to use the camera, maybe one or two code lines, but you don't need to be immersed in programming if you want to use Unity. Recently, someone got like a small part-time project in doing a commercial using Unity, but all he has to do was to control the cameras in the game engine in order to make the prototype of the trailer. So I see it can be, you can do a lot of things with Unity. I see something that you can easily get overwhelmed with all the new stuff that comes out. Artists is also something that you can use with Unity. You bring your models, just paint it or try to pop it up. And I cannot do it, but he can. Another person can do it because he's an artist, that's just a programmer. But each and every one with their own skill set can do a lot with Unity. So that's why I think it's more than just a game engine right now, especially in the industry of cinematographic, I think it is. Yeah, but I think it's more than game engine. That's
Totally.
that's That's how I see it.
What I love is all the examples that you gave are things that are being applied right now. And those are things disrupting completely different industries, from real estate to the automotive industry to, like you mentioned, training programs and things like that. And I love it because, yeah, those are things that you could do right now in Unity. And it's not even touching on the head in the pie in the sky views of virtual worlds one day, and how those will be run on game engines like Unity. And
Oh, yes.
and which is, it's fun to talk about, but that does kind of get a bit head in the clouds sometimes. But the examples that you spoke about are all realistic. People have businesses surrounding those like solutions within game engines like Unity. So that's awesome, and I'm glad you touched on that. But yeah, so that's kind of all the time that we have for. But I do really appreciate having you on the show finally, and hearing your story. I'm really, really excited to see you continue your journey and see the content that you create on your YouTube channel. All the links will be below if you want to go follow Esther. You can find her on Twitter at Rehtse Studio, REHTSE Studio. And then, yeah, follow her on LinkedIn, check out her link tree and see some of her projects. And yeah, reach out to her if she can help. If you're looking for a freelance programmer, I'm sure she'd love to help. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And yeah, wish you a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Carl, for inviting me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Zero to Play podcast. I hope you learned something about game development, the games industry as a whole, or the future of games. You can follow us on Twitter at Zero to Play, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, or any other podcasting service. Other than that, you can find links to this episode down in the description below, and I'll see you guys next week for the next episode.